Hi everybody, I just finished making this painting. Let me see if I can bring it a little closer. And for the first time, I made an actual video of myself making the painting. So that's what you're going to be seeing. We're going to do the landscape watercolor, and hopefully there'll be a few tips in there that will help you if you're doing a landscape watercolor yourselves. So I hope that this video will help you, and don't forget, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also click that little bell so you'll get reminders when I make more watercolors. I'm going to draw a landscape, and then I'm going to make a watercolor with it. But just on a quick little thing is that when I draw, I don't try to draw all the little details because I can do most of this with the brush. And I'm constantly drawing as I work. So this scene has trees in it that have reflections. So instead of doing guesswork, as I draw a couple of tree trunks here, I will also draw those same tree trunks in the reflection, because you can lose track. So if I have like a tree trunk here, I'm going to go ahead now and just kind of like lay that trunk down here. I have one that's going on the angle, moving out on the angle here. So then I'll move it in the opposite angle over here in the reflection. Same here. I'm going to put in the trunk here, and then lay the same trunk down here, down at the bottom. So this is how I go about doing this, and I'm going to continue to do this throughout the rest of the drawing, and then we'll come back to the watercolor. Okay, so I'm going to start this watercolor with some light green washes, and this kind of helps us to establish the drawing too as I lay in some of the lighter greens. So here, it doesn't look like much at the beginning. We just want to lay in some of these lighter greens, because it's always good with watercolor to start with the lights first, the lighter colors first, and then move to the darks. But in the future watercolor, I'll show you how I change that rule around a little bit. So here I'm just gonna some light washes. I'm not gonna try to do the trunk. I made my drawing already. I'm not doing the trunks yet. I'm just gonna kind of lay in some of the leaves, just suggesting where the leaves would go. Here at the top, just lay in those a little bit, and then I'll go back in and lay in the trunks, the gray. That gray color for the trunks. It's like a gray-green for the trunks. One thing to always think about here with watercolor too is that I'm always thinking negative space. A lot of negative space. So I'm going to go in here and paint in between the trunks in here. So this space right in here, go in here and just lay in that space. So I'm doing the negative space painting. And sometimes even when working with oil paints, I tend to think about negative space. So here, I use like a real light green background here, and I don't want to lose that. So I'm just going to put in some water in here, light water. Here. Some more green. I'm not even trying to get that accurate with the color right now. It's not that bright. Okay, here. Still this negative, work in the negative space between the trunks. And as I do this, you can see that already, although we're nowhere near the completion, you can see the beginning of the landscape starting to unfold. So here I'm just going to put in a wash here, and down right now at the bottom, I got a reflection, so I'm going to put in, do the negative space here. Bottom for the reflection. Here, here. Here. And the bottom here. Okay, so now go back up a little bit. And I'll add some more, a little bit darker wash of green in here. So I have my lighter green in there, and now I can just go in here. Now with this green is, I like to keep it earthy, so what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of yellow ochre to this green, just to keep it a little bit earthy. And just kind of like let the brush do most of the work. Tone here. Color. And with leaves, you just kind of like make your own little marks. Dance around on the page with the brush. Make your own little marks to make it look like, and go in here into the negative space and just like little areas, not trying to do everything, just little areas in here, just to suggest where the light is. And here, here, here. Now, in the water, there's not much, but now I want to just kind of like dance across this way to give it that look of water. It's going to be much softer. You're not really going to be able to see the leaf form, but you'll be able to see the darkness of the leaf forms in here. It won't be like this up here at the top. So I just put a little bit of tone here. And a little there. And I like to build things up in layers. So it's kind of like build the drawing in layers. Some more green. More green. While it's still wet, So while it's still wet, it'll give it a softness to it. Here, and then like the brush work, a little brush in the foreground. We'll lay that in. We will make this a little bit pale in the back foreground. We'll take a little bit of the Naples yellow and add that to the green in the foreground. And here, just kind of lay some of that in there. Okay, so we'll just let that dry. Okay, before this really dries, I'm just gonna add in a little bit of, it's like a light brown with a little yellow ochre to it, just along this area here, just to put in some earth, like a nice earthy color here. It's like adding a little warmth in there. So I'm going to put that in here, and maybe just a little bit right in here before I cover it. You know, I'm going to go back into it again. But I just want some of this to peek through and in areas, so I'll put a little back there. I look around, find some color, and then I look around to see all the places that I could use that color. Sometimes you have to move color around, and you might find that, oh yeah, there's that color's in there. There's a little warmth here. I'm going to change these to a gray, but just in this side here, a little warmth in here. Even though I'm going to change it, just want to use it as underpainting. A little warmth in there. That's all. Just a little bit of warmth in there, and then when I go back into it, maybe even down here, down at the bottom, water, just a little bit in the water. A little bit of that. Just kind of dry brush it in. It's kind of, you can see the tooth of the paper a little bit here, a little bit there, in the background here. Just to add it, just a little bit of added warmth in there, the color. And then we'll go back and put in a little bit of the trunks, with a little coolness of the trunks in there. I just want to show you that what I did is I took a rag and just kind of like wiped some of this out a little bit, because some of it lost some of its watercolor feel to it, because it was a little bit too opaque. So I'm just kind of like wiping it out a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna lay in the trunks. I'm gonna keep a rag with me in case I need to pull some lights out. But what I did was I mixed some burnt umber, some dioxine purple, and some ultramarine blue to make my gray. It'll hopefully separate a little bit and create some other nice, interesting effects as it's going down. It's better than just taking black and just trying to make a gray out of it. So here, I'm gonna go back over. I'm gonna leave the lights in there. Lighten this a little bit. So, just looking at it now. Much lighter. I'm adding a little more water to this. So I'll start out with a lighter gray here in the background, and then go right through where the limbs and part of the trunk peeks through. I'm going to go ahead and put those in now. That's why I like to do the foliage first and do the limbs last, so that I can have them peeking through. Here's that where that warm limb is. Go back in here. I have two areas in my tray, a lighter gray and a darker gray, so I can go back and forth and kind of gauge it. So I can lay in a little bit of the light gray, and then if I want to just bring in a little area of darker gray, I can just drop it in here, maybe just below the leaves. And in the background, trunk. Here. See, we're not even trying to go for a whole lot of detail right now, but this kind of gives me an idea of where we're going. Once we start gauging where we want to go with this, and it's kind of interesting that it seems like the rate with watercolor is sometimes it's not only the just putting color down, but it's like the speed. It's almost like writing, and it makes a big difference as you work. In some areas you have to work fast, and some areas you can work a little bit slow. But you just kind of like work the space in there, a little bit over here. So I've already kind of established these limbs. And here I want this side to be a little bit darker. There. Here it's going to stay soft. And here I can go back in here and put a little detail in here. Do a little lifting. Right under here. Oh, it's still wet. Right under the shadow. It becomes very gestural. Even while you're working, it becomes very, very gestural. Kind of just laying in this color. A little bit of the darks in here. And you can really start to see it happening. Keeps the freshness to it. You don't want to put too much, overdo a watercolor. A little, go right across this way. So I always think of like painting across the grain, kind of make it look like it's water. Actually, it's a little bit more dramatic than the actual scene itself, which is nice about painting, because like painting, you can make something do things a little bit more than the actual what you see in life. You can add a little to it. So this is that same gray color here, kind of like gray, this whole, the water down at the bottom. And most likely this will dry lighter. Now right near the water's edge, right around here near the water's edge, that's a darker passage. Now I'm going to try and put a little bit in now, but I might have to go back and work it a little bit more. Just right near the water's edge, kind of like defines the edge where the water and the ground break. I need a little bit more of that ultramarine blue and purple and the brown. Ultramarine blue makes a nice black. I just added a little purple to it just to give it a little different flavor. You really can't tell that much. So this is basically just about all. Okay, so here and a little bit, break it up. Some of it's implied line. A lot of the language of drawing spills over to, like with watercolor also. So you don't have to draw all the line completely. Some of it can just be implied. Your eye, your mind will fill it in. So just a little bit of implied line in there. And so I'll let this dry. Okay, so now I'm going to work with two different greens. Both of these were started with the Viridian green. One here, this one has a little bit of burnt umber added to it to make it dark. And this one has a little bit of Viridian green and yellow ochre combination to give it that olive look. So I'm going to start with that olive color green here and just kind of lay some of that in here. And go right in here in between the negative space. And as at this point, you can detail it a little bit more. We can go back in here between the trunk of the tree and just kind of like detail a little bit more as we work through it. I'm not going to do anything back there. A little bit more. You can never have enough color. Just look around for all the areas that I can use this color and also define the edges, detail the edges. And go in here and bring out the edges. Work in the negative spaces now. So here, bring in some more of the green. And so in here, some more of the negative space in here. Get rid of some of the white. Some of the white's good, gives it that sparkle in the water. Get rid of some of this. And those edges. Keep it soft. Keep everything lay in some of that color. Now I'm seeing something here. The color that I want in here is, it's not like you can just, you can't make it with white. You're gonna have to actually make it with probably a little bit of white just to make it look like that really light color, but not make it opaque. So I want to add another value in here, and I'm going to add a little yellow to this green that I started with, and just kind of like bring that in here. The camera probably won't pick it up. A lot of things that are done on camera, you really don't see it that well, but in person you'll see all the little color shifts. And a little bit down here, the yellow. This is the green with the yellow added to it. Down here in the foreground, on the ground. Bring this down to here. And it's almost like working an abstract. It's almost like lay a little color in here. And now I'm gonna let this dry, then I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna put in some darks. Okay, so right here, this is green where I added some white to it. Normally, like to think Chinese white is gonna make it very opaque, but sometimes there's some colors that you want, that you need to add white. So, and I'm not gonna put it in to try to make something lighter. I'm gonna put it in so I can change the color. So right in here, I wanted a little bit different green. So I'm going to add this green in here. Just a little bit different color green. Some of it in between in here. And a little bit here peeking out. Now this will all dry. When it dries, it's going to dry, fade away a little bit. I may have to put like several layers of this down, but I just want to bring in some of this. You can kind of see what this does. Kind of like brings in some of that light in the background. Bring some over here and a little bit, like right in here. Just like let it, that light in the background come in. Sometimes you can bring a little bit, flicker a little bit on the top. Over the top. These are the rules that we're broken. We're breaking the rules now. Breaking the rules. Rules are meant to be broken. But it's the colors that I want. And a lot of what we do is like, it has a lot of deal with color. We can change things with color. So just lay in a little bit of color in there. So before the color, I want to start putting in a lot of darks in when they get some of that color in. And now I'll go back in and add some more enhancements with some darks. In detail a little bit more with the darks. So down the bottom here, there were some really dark passages. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in. And a lot of what we do, like especially when you're negative space, I'm going to call it negative space painting, is suggestive. When you look when you step away from it, then it pulls together. You don't have to always put in all that detail. You just suggest the detail. And you just put in a little bit and say, oh, that's a tree, that's a leaf, that's a form. And you just kind of like suggest those things in there. When you put them down, you try to push the color dark, but without making it opaque. It's like pushing the color to as far as you can go with it. Without it changing to where it's too opaque. Little darks. Okay, so maybe this trunk here, I can wash a little bit over it, so to kind of like push it back into the background. And some of these, put a little dark on the side, shade the side, and just have the light hitting the side of the tree. And then back here, the more darks. Background. And here. Negative space, and some of the brush in the foreground. We can get some of those darks, just a little accents in the foreground here. And actually, this is blue, which probably won't show up on the camera. Some more. Sometimes you just get a vibe, I won't say vibe for it, but you just kind of get a feel for things as you're moving around with the paint. So here, I want to add a little bit more dark. I just got to move around. A lot of this is not, it's not green, it's actually more towards the blue side. What I want to do, okay, so right in here, between the trees, negative space again. here a little bit between the limbs. I could think about the negative space between the tree trunks, and then bring in some of that light, some of the darks in here, bringing it down. The contrast of the darks help to bring out the light. Background. So I'm almost there, because I don't like to overdo it, because if I overdo it, I'll kill the picture. So here, so you notice I did everything with one brush. Nothing real, no real fine detail. It is a sable brush. This is a number 6. Okay, so this is my last step for this painting. I'm going to, I grabbed my number 4 sable, and it's just near the end. I'm going to go into these trunks a little bit and just draw linearly, just to show some of the bark. I'm using that same combination of the purple and the brown and the blue, just to kind of put in a little bit of detail in here, in areas, not all of it, but just a little bit, just a little suggestions of areas in here. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the lights. Here, this is gonna, it's a small picture, so here in this area right here, the bark. And you can see where that brown that we put down earlier just added that little bit of warmth to the tones. Bring in a little bit more and trees in the background. This gives it that little bit of eye appeal if somebody's looking at this, especially with the smaller the picture, the more intimate, and the more, you know, like people really like to get, they usually like to get close and really look at them. So knowing that, I'll add, try to do a little something to give it that little bit of eye appeal. Here, maybe just a little tone here. And down the water, I'm not gonna, just mainly for light and shadow, not no trying to do the bark or anything like that. Just a little bit of the light and shadow. And the lights are already there, so we're just gonna add the shadow part. Move shadow. A little more. I promised a friend of mine that I'd do the watercolor. So I'll probably do some more watercolors. I just needed to do these for me. Let's see if a little bit of the bark coming, a little bit of that tree peeking through. And as I'm doing this, I thought about one little extra. Although it's dense ground, it might be interesting just to throw a little specks of blue peeking through. Use my artistic license. Right here, a little gray. Well, a little secret, I added a little bit of alizarin crimson, just like a real light wash over some of the limbs in here to bring it out. Sometimes I use alizarin to help me out with the sky also. So now for the unveiling. It's always good to see what it looks like when you take the tape off, and you can see how the picture looks with the edges, how things look revealed. There you go. My first watercolor painting done online.